Hello, I'm Kathleen Kennedy at the CNN Center in Atlanta. Just ahead, he's eluded capture for nearly 20 years, but has the Unabomber's deadly spree finally come to an end? Hopes fade, but the search continues following the crash of a plane carrying U.S. Commerce Secretary Ron Brown and 32 others. And the first medically proven drug to fight baldness can now be bought over the counter. Those stories and more coming up. Join Lyndon Souls and me for The World Today next.
Sunday, 10 years after the world's worst nuclear accident. Could Chernobyl be a nightmare waiting to happen again? CNN presents Sunday.
Time. There's never enough of it for all the things you need to do, like getting in shape and staying fit. Now with the Walk Fit Exerciser from Nordic Track, time is on your side. The safe, non-motorized Walk Fit gives you a combined upper and lower body workout. It's all in this free Walk Fit video information kit. Yours when you call this toll-free number. In just 20 minutes a day, just 3 days a week, you can discover all the enjoyment and all the benefits of walking and the time-honored quality of Nordic Track, known the world over for unsurpassed reliability. Let our 30-day in-home trial convince you that Walk Fit is the fun way to look great and feel like you're turning back the clock. Call this number now for your free Walk Fit video information kit and take the first step to better fitness. Walk Fit from Nordic Track, your time machine to total body fitness.
Billy, what's wrong?
I can't get this math.
Never before in America and in no other country in the world has it been easier to get top grades in math. How? The answer is Math Made Easy videotapes. Basic math, high school math, or college math, all tested and proven instructional videotapes just for you. If you need top grades in math, Math Made Easy tutoring tapes are a must. Used by educators all over America. It's like having your own professional tutor at your side. Follow the thousands of students who have gained confidence and have prepared for A's in math. Select the tapes you need. Call now for details on the free brochure. Dial 1-800-MATH-962. Parents or grandparents, now's the time to help a student in your family.
Mom, I got an A. That's great.
Math Made Easy tutoring tapes are guaranteed. Call now for more information. Dial 1-800-MATH-962. That's 1-800-MATH-962.
This is CNN.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kara McGinnis at the CNN Weather Center across the Central Plains. Bundle up for Thursday. It was 77 in Kansas City. It will only be about 47 degrees coming up for Thursday. The dramatic drop is due to a frontal system which is sweeping through the area and producing some snowfall across the Great Lakes, where we do have some snow advisories out between 3 and 6 inches possible. A secondary area of low pressure may develop across the southeast along the frontal system here. In the meantime, for Thursday, some thunderstorms rumbling along the deep south. This looks like it's going to swing out into the Atlantic, and for the Easter weekend, perhaps be the snow producer across the northeast and New England. We may see some areas with a combination of rain and snow in the forecast, but this spells out another round of wintry weather. We've got some cold air building up across the Rockies that spells out some rain and snow in the forecast there as well. Denver could see 2 inches. The World Today is next.
Well, Ron Brown walked and ran and flew through life. And he was a magnificent life force.
U.S. Commerce Secretary Ron Brown's mission of economic hope in the former Yugoslavia turns tragic.
From Harvard to Berkeley to a cabin in Montana. Is this man the Unabomber?
Plus, the slow and often dangerous process of unearthing some of the world's estimated 100 million landmines.
Hello and welcome to The World Today. I'm Kathleen Kennedy in Atlanta.
Thank you for joining us, everyone. I'm Lyndon Souls. We have another major story to report to you this hour. A suspect in the Unabomber case is in custody. The man is being questioned while federal agents search his cabin near Lincoln, Montana, some 40 miles northwest of Helena. A neighbor describes the suspect as a shy, quiet hermit. CNN's Greg Lefebvre joins us now live from Helena. Greg?
Good evening, Lyndon. Well, it appears that the FBI's 18-year search for the Unabomber may have ended at the doorstep of Theodore Kaczynski's mountain cabin right outside Lincoln, Montana. Kaczynski was described as a hermit, someone who pretty much lived alone. Earlier today, the FBI blocked the entrance to the little roadway that leads up to Kaczynski's cabin. Neighbors say that the cabin had no heat and had no electricity, that Kaczynski lived in what was essentially a hermit lifestyle. The last time anyone saw the Unabomber or was believed to see the Unabomber was in Salt Lake City. A woman described the man there as tall and swarthy. But the people who knew Kaczynski in Lincoln, Montana say he looked quite different.
Oh, I'd guess 5'7", long beard, long hair. Everyday run-of-the-mill kind of a person, but he doesn't look like a picture, nor is he the same height as they claim he is. If I remember right, they were saying like 5'10" or 6 feet. He's nowhere near that.
Is he known around here? Is he a character around, or?
His personality, I would say, did not allow him to really cause anybody any problems. He just rode around town on his bicycle, went to the library on occasion quite often. Well, he comes down out of this mountain, drives all the way into Lincoln, drives all the way back on his bike. And, no problem, no nothing, just one of the people.
The situation now is that Kaczynski has not yet been arrested, we understand, and that agents are continuing to pore over the contents of his home. That also earlier this year, agents sought permission and got it to search the home of his parents in Chicago, and there, we understand, also found material relevant to the Unabomber case. Kaczynski lived in this town anywhere from 8 to 11 years. Folks say he checked out books from the library that were an unusual sort of books, that is, mainly those in a language other than English. He described himself to some of his neighbors as a disabled Vietnam vet, and his neighbors said he never looked like he had a job. He never looked like he was employed as long as he lived in the community. Lyndon, back to you.
Greg, from some of the information that seems to be filtering in, it appears as though he may have bought the cabin in the area in 1971, yet the Unabomber attacks didn't begin until 1978. From what you've learned from speaking to the area residents, have they noticed whether he was likely to travel quite a bit? As you mentioned, he had a bicycle that he rode into town, and yet some of these attacks, apparently the bombs were mailed from as far away as Northern California.
That's true. However, this community is remote. There are many communities like this throughout the northern plains and the Northwest where you may not see someone for 4 months or 5 months or 6 months, and it's not considered unusual. So a long departure, a long absence, is not something that folks are concerned about here.
All right, CNN's Greg Lefebvre, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Since 1978, 3 people have been killed and dozens of others injured by mail bombs or booby-trapped packages attributed to the Unabomber. CNN's Mark Leff has more on nearly 20 years of terror.
Over the years, federal investigators have tried to recreate both the bombing suspect's appearance and his work. Over the years, nearly 18 years now, handcrafted bombs have periodically turned up in places mostly linked to high technology. Early targets involved mostly people working for universities or airlines, which prompted the FBI to codename the case Unabomb. In December 1985, a device outside a Sacramento, California computer store killed the owner when he picked it up. 2 years later, somebody got a look at a man who left an explosive outside a computer store in Salt Lake City. That description and the features in the FBI sketch are now more than 9 years old. The FBI has linked that single suspect to nearly 24 incidents around the country. Most of them hurt people. 3 times now, the victims have died. A bomb mailed from San Francisco killed an advertising executive a year and a half ago at his home near New York. And last year, less than a week after a truck bomb blew up the federal building in Oklahoma City, a timber industry lobbyist in California's capital died when he opened a package bomb at his office. Police have not linked the Unabomb suspect to Oklahoma City, but some experts believe the truck bombing led him to go after news coverage again. There is a message beyond the terror. The bomber sent letters to newspapers expressing his opposition to technology, taunting the agents trying to catch him, and offering to stop if someone would publish his manifesto. As more than 24 federal agents in San Francisco tried to catch him, Penthouse magazine publisher Larry Guccione said he'd print the letter. But by last June, the bomber raised the stakes.
And it would help if you had the ID identification ready.
Los Angeles International Airport went on security alert after a written threat to blow up an airliner unless the manifesto made it into major newspapers. The fear was real, but the bomber quickly said the threat was a hoax. In July, a University of California professor at the Berkeley campus where the suspect may have taught tried to begin a public dialogue with the bomber. Later last year, the Washington Post and other newspapers did publish the bomber's long message at federal authorities' request, they said, and with considerable misgivings. The New York Times publisher worried in print about turning the paper over to a man who murdered people, but he called it the right choice between bad options. There's even been a book, but since then, no more bombs. And from the beginning, FBI agents insisted good old-fashioned police work would eventually catch the man with the deadly crusade against technology. Mark Leff, CNN, reporting.
Heavy rains and rugged terrain are hindering rescue efforts in the jagged mountains towering over the Croatian seaside town of Dubrovnik. Commerce Secretary Ron Brown and 32 others were on a military plane that crashed today in a violent storm. There are no known survivors at this time. Croatian Air Control says the plane was cleared to land at Dubrovnik's airport, but instead it apparently went off course and slammed into a cloud-shrouded mountain. Brown's party was arriving from Tuzla, where U.S. peacekeeping troops are based.
The formal position of the government that Secretary Brown is presumed dead?
That is the formal position of the government, that the aircraft that he was on appears to be the aircraft that has gone down in the mountains in Croatia. And what we're doing now, of course, is trying to confirm as many of the facts as we can about this.
Later, the State Department clarified that remark, saying its formal position is that Ron Brown is missing. CNN's Jackie Szymanski has more on the Brown trip.
A commercial mission brought U.S. Secretary of Commerce Ron Brown to the Balkans. The trip to Bosnia and Croatia was meant to complement the U.S.-led military mission by emphasizing the civilian side of the Dayton Peace Accord. Secretary Brown and a delegation of high-level U.S. executives first traveled to Tuzla on board the very same plane that U.S. Defense Secretary William Perry flew in just last week. The plane is the Air Force equivalent of a Boeing 737. The delegation was briefed on the military success of the peace process. Secretary Brown met with U.S. troops at a base camp not far from a former confrontation line. The tour was then to continue on to the coastal port of Dubrovnik in Croatia. Over 30 people were believed on board the Secretary's plane, including government personnel and business executives. U.S. Ambassador Peter Galbraith awaited the Commerce Secretary's arrival in Dubrovnik. But 5 minutes short of the anticipated landing, Croatian authorities report losing radar contact with Brown's plane. Weather was poor. A search and rescue effort was mounted by both NATO forces in the region and Croatian authorities. NATO helicopters covered both the mountainous area around Dubrovnik and the Adriatic Sea. The plane apparently hit a mountain, and Croatian searchers have found both wreckage and bodies. Jackie Szymanski, CNN, Tuzla.
The Pentagon is offering no immediate clues about the cause of the crash. The military says there are no indications of a problem other than the obvious bad weather.
Here is the runway structure out here. The aircraft approach would have been from this direction. Okay, we're heading now, we're to the west side toward Dubrovnik. We're heading to the southeast and landing in the direction of 120. I can't tell you why they were where they were, nor am I in a position to speculate. That's exactly what General Coolidge and the accident board will attempt to determine.
The Pentagon does say there is no evidence that hostile fire hit the aircraft. President Clinton is canceling his public schedule for tomorrow. He will still sign legislation, but with less ceremony. A somber president and First Lady went to the Brown home in Washington to comfort the family. As chairman of the Democratic National Committee, Brown was influential in steering Bill Clinton to the White House in 1992. Later, the president traveled to the Commerce Department to reassure workers there. He called Brown one of the best advisors he ever had. Mr. Clinton was apparently clearly moved over the apparent loss of a close friend.
His favorite scripture verse was that wonderful verse from Isaiah, They who wait upon the Lord shall have their strength renewed. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and faint not. Well, Ron Brown walked and ran and flew through life. And he was a magnificent life force. And those of us who loved him will always be grateful for his friendship and his warmth.
His allies and rivals alike are paying tribute to Ron Brown as a gregarious person of impressive talent and energy. CNN's Jean Meserve examines both the personal and the professional journey that brought to the corridors of power a man of achievement as well as controversy.
Harlem was home for Ron Brown. His father managed a hotel right across the street from the famed Apollo Theater. But Brown spent much of his life in white environments, pushing open doors that had been shut to African Americans. His Middlebury College roommate recalls how Brown integrated the school's fraternity system.
It was before the big civil rights movements where people focused on it. So in looking back at it, we're pleased with it.
He was the first black partner at the Washington law firm of Patton, Boggs & Blow, and the first black to lead the Democratic National Committee, but only after a long and difficult fight.
It was a first, and while people were not questioning his credentials, they found other things to question. I had a talk with him once just outside of the floor of Congress and watched the real pain in his heart.
Brown made his first foray into national politics working on the 1980 presidential campaign of Senator Edward Kennedy. And in 1988, he was a top player in Jesse Jackson's bid for the White House. As chairman of the Democratic National Committee, he earned much of the credit for Bill Clinton's 1992 victory.
When Clinton was nominated, he had in place an organization and money for the party that other candidates usually had to raise and put in place after the nominating convention. That made a tremendous difference in 1992.
Brown was rewarded with the post of Commerce Secretary. He traveled often and far on the hunt for overseas business.
Ron Brown is the greatest trade emissary that we've ever had. His judgment and experience in opening markets to American business overseas, building economic relationships in this changing post-Cold War world were unequaled in the government of the United States.
There were allegations of financial improprieties, allegations Brown denied before a congressional committee.
I'm confident that I will be totally exonerated of these ridiculous and absurd charges.
Brown was cleared of one set of allegations. Another investigation is incomplete. At the 1992 Democratic Convention, Ron Brown reflected on where his life had taken him.
You gave me the chance to demonstrate what my mother and my father always taught me to believe, that in America, a kid from Harlem can go anywhere, do anything, even become chairman of the greatest party in the history of democracy.
A long trip from Harlem, indeed. Jean Meserve, CNN, Washington.
A bit later on The World Today, we'll talk with Carl Wagner, a longtime friend and political ally of Ron Brown's. He searched for years to unmask the Unabomber,
but retired from the FBI just last week. We'll speak with Rick Smith, the former spokesman for the Unabomber Task Force, next on The World Today.
Is the scene at the Freeman compound standoff as quiet as it looks? Details ahead.
And can throwing a snowball wreck your life? This man says yes. We'll explain when we come back.
The World Today is brought to you by UUNet, the Internet at work.
You know that being on the internet is critical to your business, but you
don't know who to turn to for advanced internet solutions. After all, you
need the most reliable, highest capacity service while you
have to keep your business information secure, so
you look for a company with solid internet experience that
you know is totally focused on your business needs, and
you find one company that can really make the internet work for you.
UUNet, the internet at work.
Hit $250 billion in sales like McDonald's, they put you in the Business Hall of Fame. Hit $1 trillion in real estate transactions like the Century 21 system, you're in a class by yourself. You're the #1 real estate company. And when you're this big, you can do things others can't, like average a home bought or sold by our customers every minute, every day. The Century 21 system can sell your home fast, maybe this minute, so don't waste a second. Call #1, Century 21.
one that has caught America's eye. Aurora by Oldsmobile.
If a few seconds in Greece made you relax, imagine what a few days would do. Meanwhile, here's another story. Greece, a never-ending story.
Thursday on CNN's Burden of Proof. First, the prosecution told its side of the story. Now the defense gets a turn.
Simpson attorney Robert Shapiro joins us for Rogers and my direct examination, beginning Thursday, 12:30 Eastern on CNN.
As we've been reporting, a suspect has been taken into custody in Montana in the Unabomber case. Ted Kaczynski is being questioned while a search is conducted at his mountain cabin on the Continental Divide. Joining us now live from our San Francisco bureau is a former FBI official who is very familiar with the Unabomber case. He is Rick Smith, who was the former spokesman for the Unabomber Task Force. He is now retired from the FBI as of last Friday and has now opened his own private investigation firm. Mr. Smith, thank you for joining us tonight.
Good evening.
What do you believe led to the developments today and the questioning of this particular suspect?
Well, a lot of hard work. This task force was formed in '93, and I can tell you that we looked at around 6 good suspects. In each and every case, with the exception of this one, the longer we investigated those suspects, the less it looked like they were the ones that were responsible.
Well, from the information coming in today, it appeared as though this resulted from a tip from a family member, a relative. Is that the case?
Well, I mean, I can't refer to that specifically, but I can tell you that what you're looking for in a case like this is a tip followed by an intensive investigation that corroborates the information you initially received.
So how long do you believe the FBI had been potentially looking at this fellow?
This wasn't a long-term investigation with respect to this particular person, more like 3 or 4 months.
We've been hearing word that there may have been some high-tech investigative practices being used, perhaps satellite surveillance, electronic detectors or sensors or things like that. Can you give us any confirmation of that?
Well, I can't speak to that directly, but I know that our evidence response team, once they execute a search warrant, they're the ones that actually do the search, have some very sophisticated equipment, and I'm sure in this case they use that equipment today.
Well, let me put this question to you then. Based on the evidence that you're familiar with in the case, do you believe that potentially the right person is in custody now?
Yes, I'm confident of that. I know when I left the FBI on Friday, there was a lot of confidence by the head of the task force, Jim Freeman, and I think that same confidence exists today.
Well, there's been some information that's been coming from the scene that apparently Ted Kaczynski lived in a cabin which had no electricity, and there might be some concern that perhaps that would rule him out as a suspect because of the electricity needed to basically manufacture the booby traps that were very elaborate as part of the bombs that were sent out. Also the fact he has no car, rides into town on a bicycle. How could he possibly travel the country in the way that the Unabomber must have, because there were bombs mailed from Northern California. The attacks began back in 1978 in the Chicago area.
Well, not addressing him specifically, you can always take a bus to go from one place to another.
With no one noticing?
Well, I mean, I know that the FBI, as of Friday, when I was still on board, was confident that they could resolve this thing this week. And if the search was executed today, I believe that they've solved the case.
If it turns out to be the case, what sort of crimes would the suspect be charged with? And because many of them occurred in different states, would they be prosecuted independently in each jurisdiction, or would this come under an overall federal case?
It's a federal case, but it's really up to the U.S. Attorney, and I'm not sure where venue would be, whether it be in Northern District of California or in Montana. So it's up to the Department of Justice and the U.S. Attorney.
A lot of the search in the past had been focusing on the Northern California area, and it was only, I guess, really until recently that the search had taken law enforcement investigators into the Montana area. Any particular reason for that?
Well, I think the philosophy's always been, or in the last year or so, that maybe 2 years, that there was some Bay Area connection, and I think to To have someone as the prime suspect, there would have to be that connection. And in this case, I believe there is that connection.
So again, just to finish things off with and reiterate, you believe that the FBI has the right person in custody in the Unabomber case?
From the information I have from last Friday, I believe so, yes.
All right, Rick Smith, former spokesman for the FBI Unabomber Task Force, thank you very much for joining us from our San Francisco Bureau. We appreciate it. Kathleen?
Is Libya trying to build a chemical weapons plant? Defense Secretary William Perry says yes and talks tough towards Tripoli. Details when The World Today returns.
Dad, when I was born, he invested in no-load mutual funds with T. Rowe Price. Back then, he was considered very avant-garde, investing by himself and all. Turns out those investments helped send me to school. They let me be what I always hoped to be. I learned a lot from him. How to invest for the future, and how to be a wide receiver.
For over 50 years, we've been helping people invest with confidence. T. Rowe Price.
What's the easiest way to get out of a 4x4? Get into this instead. The Audi A6 Quattro. With Quattro all-wheel drive and all the comforts of a German luxury car, it's what more and more 4x4 owners are getting into and out of every day.
I like this one. Being a single parent with 3 kids, I'm trying to make ends meet on my own, so I gotta save. The savings I'm using for activities for the kids. We go skating some weekends, to the movies, every little penny a dime, whatever I can save. I mean, if I can save it, it helps. I'd like to be able to send them to college someday. And we saw Walmart. We just came in the first time and couldn't believe the difference in the prices. So we've been here ever since.
I can't believe this has happened to me. I mean, the car tires are gone and the battery's gone.
Everybody goes through bad times. And you can see them change as you calm them down, or you explain something to them when maybe they were feeling in a position of powerlessness.
Robin, could you call a cab?
That's a great feeling. When something happens to somebody else, I want to give that back.
Thank you so much.
I think that's what this is all about, really.
Being in good hands is the only place to be.
U.S. Defense Secretary William Perry is sending a strong warning to Libya. While in Egypt today, he said the U.S. will not allow Libya to complete a suspected underground chemical weapons plant, even if it means taking military action. U.S. intelligence says the plant is under construction about 40 miles southeast of Tripoli. Perry discussed the findings with Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak.
I discussed a variety of evidence we have. I showed him photographs, yes, and they demonstrate that the Libyans are not now producing chemical weapons, but they have an extensive program underway to develop a chemical weapon production facility.
Will the United States allow that plant to open?
No.
You will not allow the plant to open?
I don't want to comment any further on that, but the answer is no.
Well, would you rule out the use of U.S. military force to...
I wouldn't rule anything out or anything in.
Libya has said the plant is part of a huge irrigation system.
In Brissett, Montana today, the Freemen were on the move, but not on the way out. Another of their leaders was arraigned, and the FBI continued to employ patience. As CNN's Jennifer Arthur reports, it's all part of day 10 in the Freeman standoff.
Activity on the Freeman compound included several members driving to and from house to cabin, with none of their moves even remotely resembling a surrender. Meantime, Richard Clark, the only Freeman member to surrender so far, was ordered held without bail Wednesday. Clark, the man who said he surrendered last Saturday to prevent others from being killed, has backed off of his threatened hunger strike. U.S. Marshals say Clark is cooperating with jailers in Billings. It is the kind of behavior many of the neighbors want to see more of.
And I hope they'll wake up and see the light, but personally, and this is my personal opinion, I don't think they will.
K.L. Bliss purchased some of the land now occupied by Freeman. He says Freeman leaders have brainwashed a few cash-strapped ranchers. And now the word cult has entered the investigation of the Freeman. John Perry Cheney, thought to be a leader of a religious cult, is jailed in Utah. Authorities in Salt Lake City say a $400,000 bogus check originating, like this one, from Justice Township was used in a failed attempt to bail out Cheney. Meantime, federal agents outside the Freeman compound in Brusette appear poised to continue being patient. FBI has set up a telephone line for verified family members to use. Their hope is that family can coax the 7 fugitive Freemen out to face charges. The 7 are among 12 Freemen named in federal indictments on charges of passing bad checks and money orders worth millions. They are also charged with armed robbery and making threats against federal officials. Several would-be negotiators have been turned down. Famed attorney Jerry Spence told CNN Wednesday he thinks he can bring a peaceful end. But Jerry Spence says the FBI has to invite him. So far, he says, the FBI has been, quote, quiet as a tomb, much like the events around the Freeman compound. Jennifer Arthur, CNN, Brusette, Montana.
Former Cleveland Mayor Carl Stokes is being remembered as a man who broke down barriers for minorities. Stokes died today of cancer. He was 68. In 1967, Stokes became the first African-American elected mayor of a major U.S. city. His administration emphasized housing and jobs, but Stokes was forced to deal with the turbulence that struck big cities in the late 60s. President Clinton appointed Stokes to an ambassadorship in 1994. He called him a friend and valued colleague.
In Arkansas, prosecutors tried to build up their case against the Whitewater business partners of President Clinton. David Hale, a key prosecution witness, was back on the stand in Little Rock. The banker testified then Governor Bill Clinton was present at a key meeting of the Whitewater business partners. Yesterday, Hale testified he understood that Mr. Clinton was to be the beneficiary of an illegal loan in 1986. White House Press Secretary Mike McCurry says the president will have an opportunity to refute what he called these false allegations during videotaped testimony. Nearly 5,000 American women die of cervical cancer annually.
But experts say virtually all the deaths could be prevented. We'll tell you what they're saying now about the importance of the routine Pap test and safe sex.
Also, a call for an international ban on landmines. Stay tuned.
This is the place for in-depth coverage of the world of sports, morning till night. This is CNN.
Billy, what's wrong?
I can't get this math.
Never before in America and in no other country in the world has it been easier to get top grades in math. How? The answer is Math Made Easy videotapes. Basic math, high school math, or college math, all tested and proven instructional videotapes just for you. If you need top grades in math, Math Made Easy tutoring tapes are a must. Used by educators all over America. It's like having your own professional tutor at your side. Follow the thousands of students who have gained confidence and have prepared for A's in math. Select the tapes you need. Call now for details on the free brochure. Dial 1-800-MATH-962. Parents or grandparents, now's the time to help a student in your family.
Mom, I got an A. That's great.
Math Made Easy tutoring tapes are guaranteed. Call now for more information. Dial 1-800-MATH-962. That's 1-800-MATH-962.
Moneyline with Lou Dobbs, tonight, 11:30 Eastern on CNN.
Among our top stories, a former Berkeley professor is in custody in Montana as a suspect in the Unabomber case. Federal agents are searching his mountain cabin in western Montana as he's being questioned. The cabin is about 40 miles northwest of Helena, near Lincoln, Montana. It has been inhabited by a man neighbors describe as a shy, quiet hermit. It is not known at this point if he is the long-sought Unabomber. This is a picture of Ted Kaczynski, pictured in his Harvard University yearbook. Though he is detained, the suspect has not been arrested or charged as yet.
Rescue workers are trying to retrieve bodies from the wreckage of a U.S. military plane carrying Commerce Secretary Ron Brown. The site is difficult to reach because of stormy weather and rough, isolated terrain. All 33 people aboard are presumed dead. The plane apparently went off course and slammed into a cloudy mountainside after being cleared to land at Dubrovnik, Croatia. The plane was flying from Tuzla, Bosnia-Herzegovina, where U.S. peacekeeping personnel are based. Brown had breakfast with troops at Camp Guardian, 6 miles west of Tuzla. He was leading a delegation of business executives looking into post-war rebuilding opportunities in the Balkans. Friends and family of Ron Brown are praising him both personally and as a public official. Joining us now live from Washington is Carl Wagner, a longtime associate of Brown's, who directed a successful 1989 campaign for the chairmanship of the Democratic National Committee. Mr. Wagner, thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be with you on a very tragic evening.
I know that it is, and I know that you must be tremendously saddened by this information. Tell me what you're feeling now as the search continues and still no confirmation.
Well, probably what everyone else is feeling who knew Ron. Ron Brown was a man for whom the glass was always half full. He was an optimist. He lived his life that way. I knew Ron probably closely as far back as 15 or 20 years ago. And but whatever the circumstance, the darkest days of the Kennedy campaign in 1980, or his unprecedented effort to be elected chair, the first African-American chair of a major political party in 1988, 89, he was without incident an optimist. And he, in being an optimist, gathered around himself people who commanded a loyalty to him and an affection to him. And so tonight, waiting word from the waterfront as to whether he's a survivor or not is very difficult.
Let me ask you about your first impressions when you met him. First, you said some 20 years ago. Tell me about that day and your initial impression of him.
Well, I mean, in 1980, I was the national political director for Senator Kennedy's campaign for president. And the nomination had been, in essence, handily won by President Carter, but turned on the issue at hand. Really was whether or not the campaign could assemble enough delegates to go to the New York convention and make a credible case for what the Democratic Party ought to stand for, and that meant winning, and winning big, in the major industrial states in the East, and especially in California. And I needed to assume the responsibilities of running the convention in New York, and simultaneously to send someone to California to run California, and to run it well, and to win big, and to do a good job. And I asked Ron, who was the vice chair of the campaign, to do that. And he did it, and he, quite frankly, loved it, did it extremely well, put the party together, not only for Senator Kennedy, but in the fall for President Clinton. And we came to New York with a delegation that was afforded Senator Kennedy an opportunity to make his case.
You managed his campaign for chairmanship of the DNC. How did that all come about?
Well, in 1980, when I asked Ron Brown to go to California for me, he walked into my office and he said, "Carl, how do you do business?" And I said, "On a handshake." And he laughed and he said, "Well, I'll go to California." And 9 years later, he walked back in the office and said, "Well, I've come for the other end of the handshake." And I said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "I want to run for chair of the Democratic Party." I tried to talk him out of it for 2 days, acknowledging that I didn't know where the Democratic Party was, but he persisted in it. The odds-on favorite, by everybody's admission, was this head of State Chairs Association, Rick Weiner. As I say, an African-American had never been elected chair of the party. No one gave him much of a chance at all. And he rallied the support of some of the most prominent governors and senators in the country. Senator Kennedy of Massachusetts, Bradley of New Jersey, Governor Cuomo of New York, and to everyone's surprise, a number of southern governors. Governor Mabus in Georgia was one of the very early supporters. Governor Casey in Pennsylvania. Ultimately, just 200 days, or just four months later, he was elected chair of the party unanimously. And I think, by everybody's admission, went on to become, perhaps in recent history, one of the most effective party chairs in the history of the party. In 1992, when Governor Clinton accepted the nomination, and Chairman Brown handed him the gavel. He handed him much more than the gavel. He handed him probably one of the most professional, well-structured, and well-led staffs in the history of the Democratic Party. He also handed him a fundraising base that afforded the candidate in the fall over $25 million, and a party united in the Congress, at the national party, and on the state level, as it had never been put together before. In essence, a general election strategy and structure. I think that's a standard that will not be easily met. I think it's a compliment to him. Ron Brown was attracted to talent. He liked it. He was comfortable with it. And I think it characterized his chairmanship at the party. I think it characterized his work at the Department of Commerce, where I spent a fair amount of time with him. His ambition in life was to draw to him and to his task and undertaking the very best he could get. And I think people...
Mr. Wagner,
yeah?
Unfortunately, we have run out of time. We appreciate you so much joining us on this very difficult day. Coming up on The World Today, some Palestinians are demonstrating disenchantment with their leader. Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat hears from students in the West Bank. Stay tuned.
A friend of mine said I should try America Online, so I did. I've gotten help with my golf swing, planned my next vacation. I even get stock price updates every 15 minutes. America Online puts over 100 newspapers and magazines right on my screen. I've got worldwide email, point-and-click internet access, and a great web browser. Plus, new features keep getting added. Call the toll-free number and you'll receive your free startup kit and 15 free hours to look around. It's worth a try. You'll see.
We're always here. No matter how difficult the story, no matter how remote the place, shedding light on world events 24 hours a day. CNN, CNN International, Headline News, CNN FM, and CNN Interactive, bringing news and information to 500 million people in over 200 countries. It's how the world gets enlightened. The networks of CNN, the world's news leader.
I will build a motor car for the great multitude, constructed of the best materials by the best men and women to be hired. Any person making a good salary will be able to own one and enjoy with his family the blessings of hours of pleasure in God's great open spaces.
I never wanted to grow up, much less get older. A daughter, even the word used to scare me. Now I have commitments, that she will have an education, that my parents will always be okay. Love is expensive.
Your responsibilities can seem overwhelming. Ask a Merrill Lynch financial consultant who can help with a plan and more ways to make the plan work than anyone else. The difference is planning. The difference is Merrill Lynch.
I've seen every card there is. Thousands of cards. Super 8's VIP card. It says, congratulations, your reservation is guaranteed, and you get 10% off. Life's great at Super 8.
Sunday on CNN Presents, 10 years after the world's worst nuclear accident. Could Chernobyl be a nightmare waiting to happen again? On the next CNN Presents, Sunday, 9 Eastern.
A protest against Palestinian Authority President Yasser Arafat. It happened as the Palestinian Council held its first meeting in the West Bank. Arab students voiced anger about the crackdown on Islamic militants. In the former Yugoslavia, the search is underway for thousands of Muslims missing since the fall of Srebrenica. In eastern Bosnia, UN investigators have discovered a number of human bones at a suspected mass grave. There are allegations the victims were executed by Bosnian Serb terrorists. This is the first physical inspection of the graves. They are some of the most crippling weapons of war and often strike long after hostilities have ended, but now a new effort is underway to try to ban the production, sale, and use of landmines. In a full-page ad in the New York Times, top U.S. military leaders say an international ban on landmines is not only humane, but militarily responsible. It's estimated that landmines kill or maim more than 26,000 people each year. As CNN's Christiana Manpour reports, many victims are in Afghanistan.
This is the face of war and peace. Infants, teenagers, adults, wounded by weapons that keep firing long after a conflict is over.
We closed this stump.
In 1 month, surgeons at one hospital in the Afghan capital Kabul amputated 35 limbs. Landmines caused almost all the injuries. Almost all the injured are civilians. The International Committee of the Red Cross runs the city's only rehabilitation center.
There is no pressure here, no pressure there.
Alberto Cairo has been fitting mine victims here for the past 6 years. The false leg business is not about to go bust.
It's pure terrorism. You know perfectly when you put a mine that the mine will hit someone innocent, someone that is not a soldier, someone that you are not fighting against.
The fight against mines is being waged in the capital and the countryside. Teams of sniffer dogs and 3,000 workers hired and trained by the United Nations search and destroy. Scraping through the soil inch by inch, it's taken 3 days just to find one mine here. It is difficult, slow, and very scary work. I must do it for my country, says Shafur Khan. 17 years of war, first against the Soviets and now against each other, have turned his country into one of the world's biggest minefields. 22 square kilometers in the capital alone. Only a fraction has been cleared. Work will last into the next century if the funding does. A mine costs $3 to make, $1,000 to remove. In the meantime,
we cannot start our schools, our university. The people, they cannot work, the farmers even, they cannot go to their land.
In addition to mines, tons of unexploded weapons help cripple economies, ruin farmland, and prevent refugees from returning home. Here, a 120mm mortar shell in someone's garden. The alarm is sounded. And this goes on day after day, week after week. And now the Red Cross has called for a total global ban on landmines. Since mines have caused several casualties amongst U.S. soldiers serving in Bosnia, the U.S. military has started to consider whether or not to join the growing anti-mine campaign. And advocates hope that will have a knock-on effect. However, there is still resistance from the many countries that make, sell, and stockpile mines. In the meantime, the UN, Red Cross, and other relief agencies are trying to protect the innocent by teaching them how to recognize and avoid mines. Because they kill about 10,000 people every year and maim many more. Because civilians, not soldiers, are the principal victims. A 13-year-old girl loses her leg collecting firewood. In societies like hers, a woman who's maimed is not marriage material. I was just farming my land. How did I know there were mines, says 16-year-old Popal, the family's only breadwinner. This hospital receives about 10 mine-wounded a day. It is bracing for double that number now that spring has come, snows are melting, and farmers are going out to plant again. Christiana Manpour, CNN, Kabul, Afghanistan.
A victory in court for former Savings and Loan Chief Charles Keating. His 1991 state conviction has just been overturned. A federal judge ruled that the instructions Judge Lance Ito gave to the jury were flawed. Keating was sentenced to 10 years in prison for selling risky bonds to investors in the Lincoln Savings and Loan. Those bonds became worthless after the government took over that S&L. Keating won't be getting out of jail anytime soon, though. He's appealing another conviction, this one in federal court for racketeering, fraud, and conspiracy. To campaign politics now, and word that New Hampshire's popular Republican governor will not seek re-election when his term expires at year's end. Steve Merrill gained national prominence when leading Bob Dole's presidential campaign effort during New Hampshire's first-in-the-nation primary in February. In an emotional news conference today, Merrill ended speculation he would challenge fellow Republican Bob Smith for his U.S. Senate seat. Merrill is in his second term as governor. So why is he stepping down? Merrill says he wants to spend more time with his family and has accomplished all he wanted to as governor.
I love this state and I love its citizens. And I want to assure you that I will continue to be a voice for fiscal sanity and restraint and for an improved quality of life for every citizen here. I have been blessed by achieving things in my life that I never dreamed possible because good men and women in New Hampshire fought to give me those opportunities.
Merrill will continue to play an advisory role in Dole's presidential campaign.
Free time in prime time. It could be a part of Campaign 96. A group of former network news anchors, senators, and former political party chairmen wants the networks to offer between 2 and 5 minutes a night to presidential candidates in the month leading up to the November election. Fox Television has already offered free time to leading candidates, but the other networks are reluctant, fearing lost revenue and viewers. And still ahead on The World Today, it may have looked like fun at the time,
but there is a price for throwing snowballs. We'll tell you what it is as The World Today continues.
Issues 96 is brought to you by Merrill Lynch. For our clients around the world, we make a difference. The difference is Merrill Lynch.
I want to tell you about my home far away. My mother and father are there.
Strengthening the links of communications requires capital. In the last 3 years, Merrill Lynch raised over $50 billion for communications companies around the globe. We connect investors to opportunities and the people of the world to each other. For them, it makes a difference. The difference is Merrill Lynch.
I'm always on the road, so I use my calling card every day. But MCI Friends and Family only covered my card calls to home, so I got AT&T True Reach Savings. Now, wherever I'm calling, I'm totally covered. Now, that's being backed up.
AT&T True Reach Savings. Save 25% on all types of U.S. calls on your AT&T phone bill when you spend just $25 a month. Proofs on the bill.
Ooh, I like the sound of that.
Savings on all kinds of calls. That's your true choice, AT&T.
Frank Langella as Pharaoh. Ben Kingsley as Moses. A magnificent two-part motion picture from TNT. Moses. See the world premiere Easter Sunday night on TNT.
It is the moment many of the 60 million Americans who suffer hair loss have been waiting for. Rogaine, the first medically proven baldness drug, is now available without a prescription. Only 1 in 4 people who use the drug experiences hair growth. Consumers can expect to start seeing Rogaine in shampoo sections of pharmacies and other stores within the next few days. A self-administered injection to treat impotence works 9 out of 10 times. A new study of the drug Caverject shows it allows for satisfactory sex in most cases. The research conducted by the drug's maker appears in the New England Journal of Medicine. Caverject is the only injection drug approved by the FDA for impotence. There is one chief complaint: it hurts.
Cervical cancer kills 5,000 women a year in the United States. A panel of experts says there are ways women can prevent it or at least make sure they don't die from it. CNN's Eugenia Halsey explains in tonight's News for Medicine.
3 months ago, 31-year-old Valerie Paterno found out through a routine pap smear she had cervical cancer. The treatment, a radical hysterectomy. And today, she is alive. Now she encourages other women to have regular pap smears.
It is not something that you put off. It's not a fun thing to do, but it's not a bad thing to do. And it saved my life. It could save yours.
Doctors say saving lives requires early detection.
The key is going to be making sure that all women have access to medical care, access to the medical system where they can then enter into these screening programs.
An expert panel convened by the National Institutes of Health agrees. It says more widespread pap smears, especially among the economically disadvantaged, such as minorities, older women, the rural, and the poor, could wipe out the disease.
In theory, cervical cancer should be one of the cancers that we can completely prevent.
Since the introduction of the pap test 50 years ago, there's been a steep decline in cervical cancer in the United States. Nevertheless, there are still 15,000 new cases a year and nearly 5,000 deaths. The panel says half of all women diagnosed with cervical cancer have never had a pap smear, and another 10% have not been tested in the past 5 years. The panel says a principal cause of cervical cancer is the human papillomavirus, or HPV, which is transmitted sexually. For that reason, it's important to discourage early sexual intercourse among adolescents and to encourage the use of condoms. Doctors say 70 to 85% of cervical cancers can be cured if detected early. As for treatment, the panel recommends surgery or radiation therapy if the cancer hasn't spread beyond the cervix. For more advanced cervical cancer, it says radiation is the treatment of choice. Eugenia Halsey, CNN, Washington.
News from Medicine is brought to you by Sustacal Nutritional Drink. Sustacal, add life to your years.
If you've been drinking Ensure, there's a little something you should know. Sustacal has more protein, less fat, and about twice as much calcium. No, Sustacal can't add years to your life, but it might help add life to your years.
Concerned about the quality of your drinking water? Get a pure water filter. For healthier, better tasting water, make sure it's pure.
Just what you need from the cool that takes your breath away. More oxygen. Introducing the all-new Mitsubishi Eclipse convertible. It has quite an effect on drivers, too. The new Eclipse convertible from Mitsubishi. We've painted the morning sun in Santa Barbara that burns away those blue-gray mists that cool the coastal vines and brighten all the colors in the grapes that go to make a brighter shade of Chardonnay. Meridian Chardonnay, raised in California sunlight, aged in French oak. This is the art of Meridian. The bright, rich flavors in every glass of Meridian Chardonnay.
We deliver great quality, time after time.
Same with Super 8.
Every room is comfortable. And roomy.
Super 8.
Super 8. Life's great at Super 8.
And now the story of a defendant who didn't have a snowball's chance in
New Jersey. We'll leave the details to CNN's Brian Jenkins.
No comment.
Jeffrey Lang walked out of court owing $650 in fines and fees.
You're better off talking to my lawyer.
It was the same sentence previously imposed on several other people who pleaded guilty to throwing snowballs at a New York Giants football game 2 days before Christmas. Thousands of spectators joined in the fracas. The person who knocked out the visiting team's equipment manager was never ID'd. 15 other people were arrested and 175 ejected. Jeff Lang soon found a photo of himself on the front of several newspapers. The Giants put up a $1,000 reward for his arrest. 15 people called in to finger him. Lang said the publicity cost him his job with a temp agency.
You know, I feel like, hey, I'm being tossed out there as a piece of meat for the Lions.
The 26-year-old held out for a trial where a photographer explained how he'd caught Lang on film with a telephoto lens, and a state trooper said Lang volunteered a confession of sorts on the way to be booked.
He said, sorry for causing you so much trouble. I didn't think throwing snowballs on a field was such a big deal. Everybody was doing it.
Robert Ballard argued that his client never intended to hurt anyone.
This doesn't fall under disorderly conduct. There's no proof that he threw anything on the field. There's no proof that he harmed anyone.
The judge said it didn't matter.
I'm satisfied that the defendant was charged with the appropriate charge. I don't think there is a more appropriate charge.
Because Lang has 2 drunk driving convictions and was 5 days shy of finishing probation for a fight with 2 policemen in 1990, his legal troubles may not be over.
Ballard says his client will go forward with a lawsuit against the New Jersey Sports Authority and the Giants, claiming the Giants held him up to public humiliation by offering a reward in his case alone.
The prosecutor rejects the notion that Lang was singled out.
He was the one that we could prove, and just like the other 6 or 7, we had the proofs to go forward.
While Lang will now have to pay for his actions, the judge could have also sent him to jail for 30 days. Brian Jenkins, CNN, East Rutherford, New Jersey.
The price you pay. That's the world today. I'm Kathleen Kennedy.
And I'm Lyndon Soles. Thanks for joining us. Sports Tonight is next.
Thursday on CNN's Burden of Proof, Simpson attorney Robert Shapiro tells his own trial experiences.
He'll be here twice, starting Thursday, 12:30 Eastern on CNN.